Good afternoon, Your Honors. Is it time to abandon the rule that a foreign divorce obtained by two Filipinos abroad is against public policy and morals and therefore void and not recognizable? Your Honors, it is time to abandon that outdated precedent. The freedom to choose one's status is a privilege inhering in a person as an intangible and inalienable right. Allow me to state the following point. First, there is no need for any legislation amending our present laws in identically conforming to a foreign law, in this case, the California Family Act of 1969. As a unique, special, and extraordinary judicial remedy, it is the petition for recognition of foreign judgments' basic premise that foreign laws, judicial decisions, and their effects, not having any Philippine counterpart, can be enforced locally if the effects are not violative of any Philippine prohibitory or mandatory law or any overriding Philippine public policy and morals. The remedy's availment is a fundamental constitutional right of every Filipino to correct his or her status. It is a part of customary international law. Second, the availability of three local Philippine remedies for marriage dissolution: nullity, annulment, termination by affidavit or reappearance, proves that Philippine public policy has always been open to the severance of marital ties between Filipinos. Article 26 of the Family Code and the Sharia law, in addition, demonstrate that absolute divorce per se is not offensive to our culture, tradition, and morals. Antonio versus Reyes, promulgated 19 years ago, enunciated, and I quote, "There is a corresponding interest of the state to defend against marriages ill-equipped to promote family life," unquote. Third, there is no prohibitory law and no mandatory law expressly disallowing absolute divorce between two Filipinos, here or abroad. Neither is there an overriding public policy against it. Both our Constitution and Family Code, the public policy statement on the protection of marriage, does not expressly refer to a prohibition against any kind of divorce or any danger thereof in particular, but to the institution of marriage in general. Marriage is an inviolable social institution. Our Constitution is a magnificent document. It provides aspirations, commands, and principles. There are two sections in our Constitution which says inviolable. The church and state separation shall be inviolable. That's a command. Marriage is an inviolable social institution. That is an aspiration. Because our Constitution cannot remedy all problems. And so that therefore the next sentence, and the state shall protect it. And so that therefore we have the Family Code to protect it. Fourth, Philippine law's omission or silence of a domestic or foreign divorce remedy between Filipinos does not signify an overriding public policy prohibiting the same. To be so, there must be a clear and positive statement of public policy against it. As Justice Marshall Harlan said, and I quote, "Legislative silence is a poor beacon to follow in discerning the proper statutory route," unquote. Justice Felix Frankfurter, in a case rejecting the creation of a principle by virtue of congressional silence, warned various consideration of parliamentary tactics and strategy might be suggested as reason for inaction of Congress, but they would only be sufficient to indicate that we walk on quicksand when we try to find in the absence of corrective legislation a controlling legal principle, unquote. To say that congressional silence creates a public policy is unsound. As Justice William Douglas said, and I quote, "It is as best treacherous to find in congressional silence alone the adoption of a controlling rule of law. The silence of Congress and its inactions are as consistent with a desire to leave the problem fluid as they are with an adoption by silence of the rule of those cases," unquote. Any legal principle resulting from an omission will only create a clearly fictional presumption in the light of the realities of the time. In that regard, it has been surveyed that today, 50% of Filipinos regard divorce as an issue of irreconcilability and not of morality and public policy. Fifth, in this regard, the case of Gabriel versus Monte de Piedad will teach us says. It says, and I quote, "In the absence of express legislation or constitutional prohibition, in order to declare a contract void as against public policy, must find that the contract as to the consideration or things to be done has a tendency to injure the public, is against the public good, or contravene some established interests of society, or is inconsistent with sound public policy and good morals, or tends to undermine the security of individual rights, whether of personal liability or private property," unquote. This guide can also be used for the determination of whether or not the effects of a foreign absolute divorce decision granted to two Filipinos is against public policy. Relevantly, Republic versus Cuevas Nang ruled that a foreign divorce by agreement, undeniably omitted or not provided in Philippine law, can be judicially recognized. It is, as the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court said, not offensive to public policy. To be against public policy, the effects must be so pernicious, detestable, fundamentally unjust, sufficiently outrageous, patently in violation of our core principles, or be so grave that recognition will be intolerable to our legal order. It must violate a deep-rooted tradition of the common will. The two Filipino party element in a foreign divorce will not lead to those situations. Senator Salonga, in his private international law treatise, said, and I quote, "Repeated use of public policy may be no more than an intolerable affectation of superior value," unquote. And he continued, "The statement that foreign law will not be applied when a strong or important public policy of the state will be infringed thereby does not, of course, furnish a precise solution. For as had been aptly stated, public policy is relative. It varies with changing legal ideas. Relatively ratione temporis. What might be against public policy yesterday may no longer be so now, and vice versa. A fixation on these outmoded public policy and moral arguments may preclude this court or any court to exercise its distinct power to re-examine the fairness of this concept in the light of prevailing circumstances. From the substantial similarity test referred to by American legal literature, which I call identity test, recognition of foreign judgment has changed to the effects test to determine its consistency with Philippine public policy. In the 1939 Sikat versus Canson case, actually, it's very early in our history, a foreign divorce was ruled as against public policy simply because the ground of desertion has no equivalent ground for marriage termination in Philippine policy. Salonga said that, and I quote, "There is a constant temptation on the part of Philippine courts to apply the domestic local law to all conflict rules. One of the reasons was," and I quote, he's saying this, "just a simple case of bias in favor of Philippine law. Such approach exhibits a selfish provincial outlook, a case of judicial parochialism, overemphasizing local fancies. It is an easy way out approach used by the courts, or some courts, not this court, to shift responsibility to the legislature." In repetition, for recognition of divorce, Takahashi and Marona, the Supreme Court said, "It should not turn a blind eye to the realities of the present time. It is hypocritical to safeguard the quantity of existing marriage and at the same time brush aside the truth that some of them are of rotten quality." In the United States, the substantial similarity test is now defunct. Fortunately, in subsequent cases, the Philippine Supreme Court likewise examined not the law or decision per se, but its effects in the Philippines. In Suzuki versus OSG, the Supreme Court ruled that in the recognition of foreign judgment, Philippine laws, in angkop, should not be pitted against the recognition of a foreign decree. Instead, the better course of action is to reconcile them and give effect to their respective purposes, unquote. Seventh, in Mr. Baluyot's case, the effects of the foreign judicial decree based on foreign law stated in the decision are this: marital dissolution, court custody, support, visitorial rights of children, termination of spousal support, separation of conjugal properties, all are consistent, if not exactly identical, with Philippine law. Indeed, what fundamental gain is it for the Philippines to refuse recognition and in so doing deprive deserving Filipinos of such effects not obnoxious or repugnant to Philippine law? 8. The Constitution Equal Protection Clause is violated by giving the chance of a favorable recognition between a Filipino and a foreigner on the one hand, but on the other hand, by assuring automatic rejection between a Filipino and a Filipino. Dito sa situation natin na ito, siguradong talo ka kasi Pinoy ka. The invocation of public policy will deny a remedy to Filipinos for what may be an injustice and an immuration in a relationship detrimental to their mental and physical health and well-being. The danger to our institution is to enhance or to carry on an obsolescent argument on public policy and morals. We have to look around. This is the distinctive power of the court in a petition for recognition of foreign judgment. To determine what is the public policy today by looking at the facts, looking around us, and then decide. And I submit, Your Honor, that it is time to abandon this outdated public policy and moral doctrine. Thank you.
Is there anything deleterious to Philippine public policy or public morals when it comes to Filipino citizens securing divorce decrees in foreign jurisdiction and having the same recognized here? Yes, Dean Santa Maria.
There is none, Your Honor. There is no express provision saying that it is against public policy. It's not against moral as you have decided in Luz, where unmarried woman living in with another person, having sexual intercourse is not disgraceful. In the same breath, Your Honor, a person trying to have a second chance in life, getting a divorce abroad, must be given an opportunity. Your Honor, the very fact that we have a petition for recognition of foreign judgment, the very fact that we have that in our rules of court, and as stated in Mijares, has become part of customary international law. We acknowledge the fact that we will allow Filipinos, if there are remedies abroad in a particular state, we will allow them. Gate lang tayo, yung petition for recognition of foreign judgment. We will see if it's against public policy. And second, Your Honor, public policy, as we have discussed, is evolving. This Supreme Court has decided a shift in certain public policy situations. In agrarian reform, Your Honor, in Association of Small Landowners and in the Philippines versus Secretary of Agrarian Reform, from just compensation in cash, the Supreme Court changed the paradigm and said, no, pwede na yung iba because the contextual milieu is so massive ang land reform sa Pilipinas. So that's what I'm saying, Your Honor. We need not have a law to define public policy. It is the distinct power of this court on the basis of that petition for recognition of foreign judgment to define that public policy as it is existing now. Because, Your Honor, as I've said a while ago, the danger, the destruction of an institution will depend on how we see or we apply a stagnant, obsolescent public policy since 1939. And the world have turned around so many times already, Your Honor. And since 1987, since that exchange between Father Bernas and Commissioner Gascon saying that, no, we do not even discourage it. As a matter of fact, it is this Supreme Court which is trailblazing the advancement of that modern attitude toward marriage.